This show is sponsored by Sevi, answering all your commercial real estate needs. Sevi is the first commercial real estate company committed to the 4 C's: commercial real estate, community, content, and culture. Go visit Sevi at Sevi, SEVI, properties.com. Again, SeviProperties.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you. We have Erik Rind. Erik is the founder and CEO of ImagineBC. Welcome to the show, Erik.
Thanks, Otto. Good to be here.
Pleasure is all mine to have you on. So before we go into your personal and business journey, in case the audience hasn't heard of ImagineBC, what do the folks at ImagineBC do? If you can just give us a brief general overview, please.
It's almost a guarantee they haven't heard of ImagineBC right now, but we hope that'll change over the next year or two. So I started ImagineBC a few years ago, primarily to create a disruptive social networking, social media type platform to today's tech giants, the YouTubes, Patreons, even the Netflixes, certainly the X's, Instagrams. I just felt, A, that the business model was completely messed up. And I also felt that there's absolutely no control over those platforms. And I suppose really what the impetus was that my grandchildren were starting to come into the world, and I couldn't imagine the world they would be inheriting. So I said to myself, I could either just sit around and, bitch about it like most people do, or I could do something about it. And we started ImagineBC to try to do something about it.
Great. So ImagineBC, is it another platform as far as social media, or no?
Yeah, I'd say it is. It's a community of members where all the members are fairly compensated for the use of your personal data, for the use of your time, and for folks like you, for your intellectual property. You're spending time on this program. It's a passion for you. I don't know what your monetization model is, but I know for a fact that the monetization model for folks with 50,000 to 100,000, maybe even as much as 500,000 followers on these platforms is abysmal and unfair. And we try to change that.
Oh, that's interesting. So are there different ways you can monetize on ImagineBC?
There are absolutely there are absolutely different ways. You can have subscription pricing, you can have premium pricing. The really big differentiator about us is that for you to put a paywall behind your content will then create a struggle for you to get your people to pay you for the content, because they're going to have to go into their wallet and use a credit card. And that's kind of skin marks. Stop. And you're going to lose a lot of people. They don't have mind listening to your stuff for free, but when they got to pay for it, I don't know how many users you might lose because of that. We hope to change that. We hope to change that for this simple reason. Our general members, the listeners, yes, we have advertising on our platform, but it's bifurcated away from the content. And when our users come on and they watch an ad or they complete a survey, they get paid. And they receive 70 to 80% of what the brand wanted to pay for them to consume their message. So they're accruing what we call points inside the platform by doing this. So now to get access to Otto's content, whoa, I just bought her a couple of those points over. I'm not going in my wallet. I'm using like a minute of my time to get access to the content. It's probably going through your head right now that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the essence of our community, that you shouldn't have to use your wallet to get to the content, because you, the consumer, should be fairly compensated for your data and your privacy and your time. And then, of course, we hope you share it with content providers who should be fairly compensated for the effort you put in.
That's great. I can't wait to get into this. As far as I'm just thinking already of several things, but before I go into that, personally, Erik, are you originally from here? Did you grow up here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area?
I did not. I grew up up on Long Island in New York, and I came down to the area a very long time ago. I'll date myself here. I came down in 1979 to go to school at GW.
Okay, nice.
So if I can take you back to Long Island to New York, growing up, like, what were you into? Did you have any other extracurricular activities outside of school? I
It
know
sounds
you're
like I'm applying for college again.
the reason I'm asking is, obviously you're doing business. So was business always of interest to you, or did that come later on in life?
No, I was born old. So yes, business was always an interest to me. And interestingly enough, my hobbies that I had or my activities I had as a kid have translated into my business life. I became a golfer. I'm a squash player. I'm a tennis player. These are things that have natural acute connection into the business community. But I have very broad interests. I love opera. I love all types of music. So I'm able to, and I did this, and I focused on a large range of interests because I knew one day that would help me in the business world. So yeah, I was born old.
So you said you came here because of GW. What'd you major in?
Interestingly enough, history.
Oh, wow, very interesting. Were you just always interested in history, or
Yes,
what was the thought?
fascinated.
Okay,
Still am.
okay.
I read nonfiction. I won't say exclusively, but more than I read fiction.
Hmm.
Um, and I yes, I am. And sadly, I think if we look at what's going on in the world, history should be taught with much stronger than it's dying. And there's a reason it shouldn't die. We should understand who we are, where we came from. We should be proud of what we are and where we came from. All disappearing when you lose your history.
In college, Eric, were you thinking of maybe teaching it? And was that the thought back then
No.
afterwards? Or no? Okay.
Like any idiot who majors in history, my initial inclination was to go to law school.
Oh, sure.
Uh, two reasons I didn't go to law school. One is I really felt that if I was going to be a lawyer, I'd probably want to be a litigator. And if I was going to be a litigator, I'd probably have to be a prosecutor. And it doesn't make it, I don't want to go into politics and I wouldn't make enough money. So and the second thing was I just didn't get good enough LSAT scores. So my went down a different path.
Sure. So what happened after GW?
Well, the way I ended up here in this
Hmm.
tech world is, again, interesting that as a history major at GW, we were required to take, back then it was 9 credits, which was 3 courses of statistics. Go figure. So I took those 3 courses, and one of them was a Fortran programming course. And when I took that course, I realized what my future was because I was really good at it.
Wow.
And I was really good at it. Secondly, I really enjoyed programming. I love the concept behind it. So at that point, even though I was finishing my history major, and this is 1982, so I'm back before anything existed. I dove into everything that was out there, and I realized that if I wasn't going to go to law school with a history degree, what was I going to do? And then it became clear I was going to go into the tech world.
Okay. So did you become a developer eventually in program, or?
No, I took a different route. I actually got lucky enough to get a job. Took me 3 months out of college, but after 3 months of working at it one other place, I got a job working for Pricewaterhouse in their management consulting group here in DC. Back
Mhm.
then, it was called their Office of Government Services, and that's what put me on this trajectory.
Okay. So you were at PwC. Were you there for a while?
I was there for almost I guess 8 or 9 years,
Yeah. As a
and to
consultant.
be honest, loved every minute of it.
Okay. So what made you switch then afterwards?
The answer to that goes into the vagaries of how Price Waterhouse, at least back then, worked. So it was a partnership. I think it might still be a partnership, even maybe not, but it was a partnership back then, a true partnership. You actually had to buy in when you made the partnership, and to get into the partnership, the rules were you had to be nominated by somebody in your office, blah blah blah, and the guy who was going to nominate me got moved to Atlanta, and I didn't want to move to Atlanta for reasons around my wife's career. So I left management consulting, and I was being recruited at that time by a couple of small startups. Went to work for them, and after working for them for a couple of years, ended up on my own as an entrepreneur in the technical world.
But this was with ImagineBC or other
Oh, this
company?
is long before. So
Okay.
I mean, you can see how old I am. And he could go from the years. So I actually spent, I think it was 28 years writing software and running a business in what I don't, it used to be called human capital management, payroll, HR, and benefits software.
Mm-hmm.
So competing against the ADPs of the world. And we had a boutique business and did well. I started one company, that one we sold and made a bunch of money. Started another, failed. Started another, still running that one separately from ImagineBC. But after being in that world for a number of years, as I said, I started to think about other things in my life because of my grandchildren. And although I'm still involved with the HR company, I spun off and started ImagineBC.
Erik, being involved with all these different businesses, some of them you founded yourself, sometimes you worked for others. What would you say the main thing that comes to mind as far as what made them successful?
Well, I mean, in the tech world, yeah, it's a combination of having an innovative product at the right time. And the latter is very important. You can have a great product, but if it's the wrong time, it doesn't matter. So when we succeeded, we had the right product at the right time, and one of the big guys bought us out,
Mm,
and so that was perfect.
okay.
But then we weren't stopped, so we did it again. We figured they didn't stop us from starting over. We didn't have any non-competes or anything. So we
Okay.
figured, what the heck?
Yeah.
And we tried it again. And in that situation, the timing wasn't right. Plus, I wasn't running the company. We lost focus on what we wanted to be, and that one failed miserably. But I still love the software. So when that failed, I essentially bought it away from the people, and
Okay.
I started it again. And the timing was right there, and we've done all right. We've been in business for 20 years. I've employed, up to 30 people. In fact, I just had one of my employees retire. Can you imagine?
Oh,
Been with
wow.
me for almost 25 years in the HR world. So it's an innovative product, but the timing for your market has to be right. And of course you have to be well heeled. You have to have the money to invest in it.
So when you thought about ImagineBC, were you getting, obviously you have this other company, were you getting maybe antsy or like, let me look at something else or,
Yeah,
okay.
it goes back to as I said, I loved every minute of my day when I worked at Pricewaterhouse because my nature is to be a problem solver. But I've been doing this same problem for 20 some odd years. It
Yeah.
gets, I mean, for a lot of it, I really loved it. There's a lot of vagaries in that world. You get to learn about a lot of companies, see a lot of different how they work because you're going into their payroll and benefits and HR. You're touching their people. So even though it's in the tech world, you get to get a glimpse inside of a lot of different companies. You learn a lot. It was a great education. But eventually, there are just so many different types of companies. It does get stale. Um, so yeah, Imagine BC, A was a completely different world, B a completely different problem, and C a completely different set of technologies. So all very exciting.
And ImagineBC was founded how long ago?
Well, my grandchild is just turning 6, so 6 years ago.
Okay. It- I guess then the main thing is getting people on the platform. Is that what it is or?
Yeah, well, why 6 years and nobody knows about us? And the answer to that is first we launched it probably 2 years after we started developing it, and we launched it here in the United States. And the problem with launching a platform like ours in the United States is that we're unfortunately too wealthy a nation. That we're wealthy and our population is lazy. And oh, you can make 25 cents watching an ad. Now, that doesn't mean they don't need the 25 cents, but they're lazy. They don't get it. They don't want to mentally stimulate themselves to do it. So we spun our wheels for a while, probably, and then COVID hit and that slowed everything down. But as we came out of COVID, we had pivoted. And even though I'm a Maryland company, we are totally focused right now in Africa. And I got to tell you, they get it over there because
Wow.
every penny matters. Now, that doesn't, as I said, it doesn't mean we don't need it here,
Mhm.
but for us, what we decided was we'll prove the model works over there. It'll be a lot easier for us to sell it back here once we've done that.
No, that's a great idea. What percentage of your users you would say are in Africa?
Right now, I'd say probably about 70% are in Africa. I mean,
Okay.
we did launch here in the United States. We got a bunch of people who actually they play our daily trivia game. So they actually use the platform. We give away prizes related to it, but we stopped marketing it here in the United States. And we're on the verge. You're catching me like within weeks of launching majorly in South Africa, Nigeria, Uganda, and Kenya. So, and every one of those opportunities, because of our partners in those localities, has already built-in communities with millions of people.
Oh, wow, that's
So we
amazing.
expect pretty significant penetration in those countries in the next few months, and growing after that.
So currently, what countries are you in Africa?
The four I just mentioned. So South
Okay.
Africa, I'll go South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda. Those we've got initiatives that are literally within a few weeks of they'll all be launching probably early February. Nigeria may launch any day. We're also talking with groups in Senegal, Gambia, and Botswana.
So when you mentioned partnership, already a built-in audience of millions, I believe you mentioned. How does that work?
Yeah, so let's take Uganda as an example.
Okay.
So there we were interested. We have a very well connected fellow on the ground who works with the company like an agent for us, and he's compensated for that work, both majorly through potential equity in the company. So that keeps you motivated, and he makes the introductions to us for the companies and or agencies, and one of them was the Uganda National Farmers Federation, and that little organization has 4.5 million members, and those 4.5 million members probably have families. They probably have spouses and children. So when you do that, all who would be natural users of our application. So when you look at that, you can say, wow, you've got direct access to a very large existing community that has a communications pipeline. And that makes it easier for us to then go talk to brands, because all brands are interested in is how many people are going to watch, what's your penetration? How many people are going to see it? I'll come back to that in a second, because that itself is a stupid idea, but that's what they want. That's the way the world's always been. How many people, right? So if you're going to get them to allocate budget, you got to show. Well, we get to say, well, we have 4.5 million plus, so that gets their attention in a hurry. So that's how we do it. And literally each one of those countries, we have some relationship with some organization that already has an existing community that they see value to by bringing their members onto our platform.
So for example, this example you just gave, Eric, the farmer organization. So let's say they all migrate to this platform, to ImagineBC. Is it under still the same name and brand, ImagineBC?
No, we brand it differently pretty much in each place. So like in Kenya, it'll go out under the name Truly Kenya. In South Africa, it's going out under the name Game for Me. In Nigeria, it's going out under the name Omniverse. So now we brand it locally, usually pretty much by country.
Okay. So almost like white labeling it
Yes.
per se. Okay, per country. So these 4.5 million people, they come to the platform with the goal of seeing something, learning something, or just entertainment.
Yes, because the Farmers Federation will now start to use our platform as their primary vehicle for communicating to these people. They will no longer use YouTube. They will no longer use any of those non-secure, horribly infiltrated, terribly corrupt platforms. No longer will ads pop up no longer will they have to worry about some objectionable crap ends up near their content. Free and clear of all that. Now they will have that capability to send their information, their content to their users in as pure a fashion as possible, and tell their users you can make money on the platform while you're doing it.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, now you see, it's starting to get through your head.
Okay. So they no longer have to, like you said, look at YouTube video or follow them on Instagram or Facebook. They can get all that information.
We've built similar features to those platforms that make sense for how our model works. So you can do Instagram, TikTok is a viral weapon, right? You could do quick posts like that, You can do long form content like on YouTube and Patreon, and even Netflix. You could have that type of model on there too if you wanted. You could have serialized content as well. And you could also, I mean, we actually in the early days, back about 3 or 4 years ago, we actually ran a live MMA event, so we could do live events as well.
Oh, okay. Wow. And for example, this organization, this farm organization, do they have to pay to
No,
get up? No? Okay.
we're totally free. So the way our economy, we say it's an economy because we're a participant in it as well, right? So I say there's four actors in our world, and those actors are, there's the brands who advertise, there's the content creators like yourself, and then there's the general consumer, and then there's us, and we make it possible. So the way it works is that we actually have an Ethereum blockchain smart contract. So total transparency, nobody can negotiate better deals with us. Everybody knows and everybody gets the exact same deal. And that deal is this, is that a content creator like yourself at a minimum will make 70% of whatever it is you sell. Now, that could be a subscription, it could be premium content, and that's 70% of, you pick the price. We don't. Whatever. You're a business person. Figure out what's the right price for you, right? That's going to get you your maximum market. That's good old fair capitalism. So you set your price, you get 70% minimum. I say minimum because let's talk about that other 30%. We, ImagineBC, we take 15, period. Again, nobody gets better or worse terms. That leaves 15%. That other 15% gets split into 10 and 5. 10% goes to who referred the buyer of the transaction and who referred the seller of the transaction. So let's take your community. Let's say you came on the platform, you went out and said, hey, I'm going over ImagineBC now. You're not going to find me here on these platforms over here anymore. Come on, check me out over here. And then, right, so your people start to sign up. Well, they're signing up using your referral code. You just don't get on our system. You have to be invited by somebody. And that referral code is huge. So you'd have a referral code, they'd be using your referral code. So now if they bought a subscription to your content, you'd get your 70, but they're the buyer, you're the referrer of them buying your content, so you get another 10. So you'd make 80%.
Interesting.
Now, if I got what came in as your referrer, I'd be the referrer of the seller, and I could make 5. So if you had 10 buddies and you went out to them and said, you got to get on this because this model's great, they're still making everything they're making, and you're going to make 5% of everything they sell. Now, the ads work the same way. Watching an ad works the same way. A brand wants to spend, I'm going to use $1. It's a lot. Nobody's spending $1 for you to watch an ad, but it's actually a brand will spend is higher than I ever thought it would be. But let's say it's $1 because the math is easy.
Mm-hmm.
A brand's going to spend $1 for a person to watch their ad. So I was invited by you, Otto, and I come on and I watch the ad. So I make 70%. I make 70% of that ad. Because you invited me, and I'm essentially the seller because I'm selling my time and data to the brand for that 70%, you'll actually make 5% when I watch that ad. You'll make a nickel.
Okay.
And whoever invited the brand in, they'll make 10 cents. So you invite all your friends in, and when they're watching ads, and if they buy content, if they come and buy content, because there's always a buyer and a seller, and who referred the buyer and who referred the seller, and they get that piece of 5 and 10. Content creators and the people watching the ads always get their 70%. So, and that, again, smart contract, totally transparent, terms can't change, no magic algorithms, no how do I beat the system. It's not about that. Put good content out. People will watch it and they'll pay for it. That's called business.
So everyone gets paid by Ethereum? Is that how
No, we don't use,
okay.
we use blockchain to secure your provenance of your content. We don't use it yet as crypto because what good is Ethereum to you? How do you spend it? You can't.
Yeah, correct. I'm thinking especially people in Africa, all they care about is their national currency.
Right. So in fact, everything is done in a point system. 1 point is worth $1. And if you want to spend it, you're spending points inside of us. But in each one of those countries, we've arranged for our members to be able to take their points down And over there's no banking systems that are trusted. So everybody trusts their mobile wallets. So we have an arrangement with the usually the biggest mobile wallet in each country. So people can download their points in their mobile wallets and they go spend them in the real world.
So in that example, Eric, if I'm a citizen in Uganda or whatever, and I see an ad and it pays $1, I'm getting 5% of that. Is that?
No, you're getting, if you watch that ad,
I'm just watching it. Yeah.
You're getting 70%. You're getting 70 cents for watching that ad. That's life changing.
Yes.
So the guy, our partners down in South Africa, they are, again, I think they'll launch next week. Oh, I'm sorry. No, sorry. They're going to probably launch mid-February, but it looks like they've got enough brands on board to ensure that the initial population that they'll be inviting will earn roughly about 350 Rand a month. That equates to about $18, $19 US these days. That's a ton of money for a person in South Africa. I mean, a ton. Now, it's an interesting model. This particular partner is really quite cool. So what they do is their business is they actually lease phones.
Okay.
So they lease very good smartphones. So they don't lease these cheap Chinese Hisense phones. And don't get me wrong, I love the Chinese people. I think they're wonderful. I don't like the Chinese government. So when you hear me disparage the Chinese, it's their government, not the people. The people are wonderful. I have tremendous respect for the people. They play the long game. But you can't trust anything the Chinese produce because this is part of their game for about world geopolitics. So these Hisense phones, I think I have one here. Right here. This piece of crap, which I actually bought in South Africa, very cheap phone, but it's Chinese, so you have no idea what's inside of it. So our guys actually lease you a very high-end Nokia phone, not produced by the Chinese, that they lease it to you and you can literally pay for it on a daily basis. And if you don't make your payment, the phone shuts off except for you to make your payment and then it'll turn back on. Well, now combine that with our model. So they up before us, they have people scrounging around to find the money they need to keep their phone activated, right, on a daily basis. But now you watch an ad and your phone stays on. And $18 is going to buy you a lot more than the phone. So you're going to get access to a really good smartphone and still have some money left over for all. These guys also sell some insurance programs. Brilliant model.
This is amazing. It's very interesting. It's a much different take on content and platform than what we have here in America.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because you know, again, you see how old I am. So I was an established entrepreneur in the tech world before Google ever existed. And trust me, I lived my life very nicely without them. And I still live my life nicely without them. I hate them. I don't use any of their stuff if I don't have to. Now they dominate. So in the tech world, you have to use some of their databases to get access to zip codes and area codes and things like that. But you know how much time I spend on YouTube in a week?
Zero.
It's a waste of my time. I just don't do it. But I live in a world before them. And in the world before them, the business model was if you had intellectual property and something of value, people will be willing to pay you for it. Then came this weird world where people like yourself have to give stuff away for free. And you got those guys having some these algorithms that figure out the value, and they'll send you a couple bucks. Enough? I don't know. And here's a good example I use. So my son's brother-in-law was a big, he was an expert in some online video game. Can't remember the name of it. But he had a nice community. He had about 250,000 people who watched him. And he, not surprisingly, he put all his stuff out on YouTube. And they didn't pay him. He put it out there for free. And YouTube would send him a check every now and then. I think the biggest check he got for them was 1 month he got like $3,000. Well, that's the biggest check. And if I multiply that by 12, that's $36,000. You can't live in the DMV for $36,000. So you can imagine his life was stuck. He was working a 50 to 70 hour a week to keep his content fresh and barely, and his life was on hold. He couldn't, hoping the money would get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the model. Your listeners know it. That's the way it is. And for every one person who makes six figures on YouTube, There are thousands who make nothing. And we don't know why those people make money and you don't, because you don't know. They're picking the winners and the losers. This is a terrible business model. Now, let's take that business model and put it in ImagineBC. I've got 250,000 users. They're all young kids, probably, because it's some kind of video game. So they're somewhere between like 16 and 24 years old, let's say. Let's say he charged 25 cents a month for access to his content. Well, that's one ad. Watch an ad. Get access to the content. Now take 70% of 250,000, divide 250,000 by 4. That's 70-something thousand, right? Then take 70% of that. That's a lot of money. Now he's not just trying to find a way out of the house. He can start a family, he can move on with life, and he can start planning for the future. He can start building a business off of his content. Fair compensation for his model, because people were willing to pay. That's for just 25 cents. What if he charged $1? You watch 4 ads. You see how it works?
Yeah, it's so true, especially nowadays. I have young children, and sometimes you ask kids, they're like, "Oh, what do you want to be?" "Oh, a YouTuber," because
oh yeah,
that's what they see, right?
Yeah, they think they're all making zillions of dollars. Tell them my son's brother-in-law story. 50 to 70-hour work week to make nothing. Couldn't go on vacation because there's this fear. If you're not fresh, you're gone. That's not a business. That's torture. And so started ImagineBC, interestingly enough, to disrupt the guys who disrupted the world. Because what they created, and not because they intended to, when they put their business plans together back in 1994 or 5 or 6, or these guys, Schmidt, or not Schmidt, but Brin, and all were at Stanford, and they weren't intention to screw the world up, but they didn't really know what they had. And the model they followed does screw the world up, and we've all seen that now. I mean, it's 2024. We've had 24 years of this nonsense, and we've seen the destructive capabilities of what the internet controlled by these type of platforms can do. And sure, there's people going to be listening to this and say, "Oh, but this is look what happened here. This was good." Whatever the good is, and there is good, is way outweighed by the bad. And we don't live in a world where we protect things because of one good thing, when there are so many bad. At least I don't want to live in that world. So, hence, disrupt the disruptors.
Yeah. Erik, with your rich career, what would you say you're most proud of thus far throughout your whole business career?
Well, I'm not necessarily proud. I'm very proud of my business career, but that's not what drives. I'm proud of I'm proud of. I'm actually going to celebrate my 40th wedding anniversary this year.
Oh, congrats.
How many people get to say that, right?
That's a big one.
I have 2 wonderful sons who have now given me 3, and the 4th grandchildren on the way. That's what I'm proud of. I don't judge my life by my successes and failures in business. That's what keeps my mind stimulated. Without that, people, I'm at the age where my friends are retiring. So they say, "When are you retiring?" I give them the straight answer: I'm never retiring, because that would be death for me. To wake up one morning and have no problem to solve would mean I'd have to create the problem. And I've seen me do that, and I'm not going down that path.
I feel the same way as far as retirement. Maybe when I'm underground, that's the only way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I will never. I will probably slow down as age will require you to do, but I will never retire.
I love that. So for you, it's all about the family then. It's nothing to do with what you've done in business.
No, as I said, I stuck in this area because I had to give consideration to my wife's career. She's an attorney. She was just getting established here. Moving to Atlanta wouldn't have made sense. So I balanced my move in Atlanta to make the partnership Pricewaterhouse versus disrupting her career. And obviously I'm still here, so that decision. I have both my sons working for me. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are they both?
There's good and bad about that.
Sure. Are they both in ImagineBC?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask you next, as far as when you founded the company, was it just you by yourself in the beginning, or did you start with some type of team?
Well, I started with it. I started with a team. So as I said, our other company is still operating. So I went to the board of directors there and I told them the vision. I convinced them to invest into the development of ImagineBC, and I've used resources from that side of the company, and we share back and forth.
Sure.
But for the most part, though, I'll tell you, I built ImagineBC with very few what would be called W-2 employees,
Hmm.
and I built it with a large community of people who are incentivized to see the success of the platform, and the people like we have on the ground over in Africa. And they all have opportunities to make huge upside in equity in the company. So yeah, I haven't had to do with it very long, and I outsource all the development. So, and I've done this for a long time, so I can do it pretty quickly. I can develop software pretty fast.
That's great. If someone comes to you and they get inspired to maybe start their own company, maybe in tech, maybe totally different industry, what advice would you give that individual?
I'm what you would call a reluctant entrepreneur, even though I've been one for a long time. Here's the thing about starting business. I guess nobody sells, but is the sad truth. And I don't have a lot of people working for me right now on the Imagine VC side, but what you see in the world, it's bad. Is that when you own your own business, you think, wow, I'm in charge of all the decisions. I get to be stimulated by the work of taking whatever it is my business is, whatever my product or services is to market. That is all true. But what you typically find out is you get bogged out by your employees. It is when you're the boss of a small company, there's no layer, right? You don't have you can't afford middle level management. So, I mean, if you've got enough funding where you can hire middle level management to keep you, where you could just be waking up every day focused 100% on your business, that's wonderful. Let me tell you, it doesn't exist, not in my lifetime or any of my. I go into work and I spend 3, 4 hours every day listening to why this person didn't show up because her cat was sick. Or, and again, that's life, but
Sure.
that's the reality, right? Is that you're now nobody, unless you're an independent contractor who sells himself to company, right? Anybody who starts a business is going to have employees, and when you have employees, somehow you're not connected into their lives, whether you like it or not. And for somebody like me, who's a problem solver, I don't want to solve their problems. Those are I want to focus on my business. So unfortunately, you get pulled away a lot. So that's what makes your days a lot longer, right? So instead of getting a productive 8 hour day in, you probably have to work a 12 to 14 hour day because you had 3 or 4 non-productive hours.
It's so true. It just reminds me of a comment that I was talking to someone a while ago, and they were saying they made the most money when they were just alone working. I think maybe it was just him and an assistant. And then as soon as they started growing the team, more responsibilities, like you said, more managing these people, the money, even though he was able to make more money top line, of course, but the profitability,
Right.
yeah.
And I'll go back. So why I tell you that my 8 or 9 years of Pricewaterhouse were the happiest of my life from a business perspective is because until I started Imagine BC is fascinating right now. So, but those years were fascinating because Pricewaterhouse is a huge company. I never had to worry about whether I was going to get paid or not.
Yeah.
Right. There was plenty of money. It's a big outfit. I was lucky enough to be allowed to do what I did best. That was their job, by the way, too. They succeeded by finding what their staff did best. And they saw what I could do from a technology point of view, especially way back then, and they let me run. So I was just allowed to think about where the future was going and help the firm understand how to place ourselves properly to win the work we needed to win to make money. So I didn't have staff I had to worry about. That was a fascinating job. And I ran to work every day. I ran to work every day to do it.
That's great. Erik, are there any habits or traits you feel that have helped you in business or maybe even just outside of business, just personally at home or with family?
Well, the business one's fairly straightforward. Um, I'll give it to you in a story, in a little story. So when
Mhm.
I was a younger consultant, maybe I had only been working at Pricewaterhouse for 3 or 4 years. The guy who I was working for, who actually is on my board of directors because ended up having a great relationship, and I respect him beyond anything else. We were sitting there, and he was talking to a prospective client. We were in sell mode, and this was about technical work. And he said this. He said this to them. He said, "I can design you the greatest system that ever existed, but if I didn't listen to you while we were designing it, you're going to hate it. Doesn't matter what I designed. It could be great, but you won't feel any ownership in it. So you're going to hate it. I can design something that is maybe 85% of that, but if I did it in corroboration with you and listen to you, you're probably going to love it." I can't tell you how important a lesson that was for me in my career, which is what I'm doing right now because you want me to fill up your airtime. But typically, I sit and I listen. I ask questions and I listen. And over the years, I've driven people nuts because I don't take notes. I remember another thing. I have a very good memory. So I concentrate, I listen, I take in, and then like 3 days later, I may contact them and start asking questions because I've let it. It's just a different way of doing work because
Mhm.
that lesson that he taught me was so important that I better be listening and not speaking. Yeah, I got something to sell, but they have to want it.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it's about asking the right questions too, just to get to learn more, right? What they're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're not listening, you're not going to ask the right questions. I mean, too often that these large, the McKinseys and even my alma mater, these days they go by the book. They go in. They're the questions they're told to ask. They're not listening. They're not. The world has stopped listening. Let's look at it. Look what's going on. We've stopped listening to one another. We don't have to agree, but we got to listen, right? And if I'm going to try to sell you something, I've got to look for the 1 or 2 points where we could be in agreement on, and I can get you doing what you're doing right now, doing this. When your head's going like this, I'm not getting the sale. If I can get you doing this, right, I have a good chance.
Yeah. No, it's very true. It just reminds me, and sometimes it might require you maybe you training or teaching the client, right? Some things.
Oh yeah.
I'm in commercial real estate, so just the other day this week, I sent a client a site, a property, and we talk about it, and then he's like, "Okay, I'm going to discuss it with my partner," and then he tells me, "Okay, not interested." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine, that's normal." But that's it, not interested. I'm like, "Okay, why not?" I need more details just so I can know when I go out to the marketplace what exactly you're looking for. Not interested, it's fine. I understand that, but I need more color to that. What is it that we're not interested? Is it the demographics of the area? Is it where exactly the space is located, or the income, or whatever it may be, right?
Right. And here's the important thing about what you said. And here's how I hate to use the word spin because that sounds horrible, but why is it worth that guy answering those questions for you? Because I won't waste your time next time. Answer these questions and I'll understand you better. If you're not interested and I understand why you're not interested, then we're going to have a much better relationship because you'll know
100%.
when I'm calling you, I'm not going to be wasting your time.
Yeah, it's so true. What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role today at Imagine BC?
Because we funded it ourselves, we're strapped for cash as many startups are. So it's difficult to try to get stuff done in Africa when we're trying to sit here, sitting here. This stuff is wonderful, but there's no substitution for being on the ground. Two quick examples. So to get our mobile integration working in Nigeria, I won't mention the company, but it's taken us 6 months. That's ridiculous. That was ridiculous. If we had somebody on, and it's the way that you do business there. If we
Mhm.
had somebody on the ground who would just go sit in their office every day, we would have gotten it done much quicker. I spent some time over there. It's a cultural thing, So if we could afford to have somebody on the ground, so unfortunately we go slower. And another cultural thing. So we're Americans, so we had the holiday and we're back to work. In Uganda, January 23rd and they're still wandering back in from their villages. So, and wonderful. That's their culture. It's not my job to tell them they're wrong. If I had somebody on the ground, we can go to the village, right? But there's no connectivity, right? So it's dealing with the cultural aspects of it and making sure you don't insult them, because Americans, we could be, they love talking to us, they love doing business with us, but we can be pretty arrogant. You got to be careful. We got enough of our own problems. We can't be disparaging other people.
Do they see us as aggressive over there, or
No,
okay?
interestingly not. No, I wouldn't say they see us as aggressive. They are very wary that they think that there's a higher level of sophistication, I guess. So they're wary we try to take advantage of that.
Okay, I see.
But it's you got to be careful how you write emails over there. It's culturally very sensitive. Doing business over there, you wouldn't have you would just naturally do it. But when you're used to doing business here and you start doing business over there, you got to be careful. I actually now use AI to rewrite all my emails, having them rewrite it to be culturally sensitive to my audience, and not because I think we're inferior or we're superior, but because I don't want to insult them, right?
Sure, sure.
I should make the effort to not insult them. And I should learn their culture, and I do. I learn more about it as I see how the AI rewrites it. I can see the subtle differences in language. They still use dear over there. I mean, what is like people use dear so and so? I mean,
I have seen that, and I don't know what culture, but I have seen that in some emails.
yeah, I mean it's mind-boggling. They still use misters, and they use last names, not first names, and there's pecking orders of hierarchy in meetings, who speaks and who doesn't speak. That itself is a very interesting thing to deal with. But to get to your question, it slows you down,
When
especially when you can't be on the ground.
speaking about AI, what do you give the prompt? Is you write this email in someone from coming from Uganda, or what's
Yes, I,
okay?
I, I say I'll give them the email and I'll say,
Sure.
please read and analyze this email and rewrite it in such a way as it will be more professional and acceptable to a reader from fill in the blank.
Okay. Do you use AI in other aspects of your business
I
besides
use it
this?
all day long.
Interesting.
It, it's it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's really quite fascinating and unbelievable. And I just had my development group do a proof of concept because I asked them to go through and look at the entire development life cycle and say, if we start using this, how much more productive can we be? And I did this. I don't do things willy-nilly because I literally have spent the last month coding again. I haven't coded in probably 15 years. Now, here's how good it is, Otto. I haven't coded in 15 years. The last time I coded, I did all my coding in C++. I don't know how technical you are, but that was the language of the day back then. Now it's all Python, Java, blah, 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 blah. It's things I've never seen in my life. And it's all developed through web pages that it's all so different from when I programmed. Didn't matter. I got on with that with I use ChatGPT. I got on with ChatGPT and I told it what I wanted to do. And I said, give me write it in this language. And it did it. I took my specification and I put in, I want a screen that looks like this. Give it to me in this language. And it did it. Now, it got within 85, 90%, but that's stunning. So I'm able to develop, and I don't even really know or ever learn the language that I'm using. Doesn't matter. It writes it for me. I can still think to build systems. I can ask it the right questions and it does all the writing. And my development team came back and they said through their proof of concept, they think they'll get double the productivity. And I'll tell you, I think because I pay them, right? I think that's BS. I think you could probably get 3 to 4 times the productivity using these tools right. There's a learning curve. You got to learn how to talk to it,
Mhm.
right? And here's the really interesting thing about it. It doesn't understand complex thought. You and I could be having a conversation, and in one sentence or in one paragraph or whatever, I can give you 2 or 3 thoughts, and your brain can say thought one, thought two, and thought three. And your response might be, let me talk to you about the first one. And then you'll address the second, the third. The human brain has that capacity. AI doesn't, not from what I can tell. If I give it 3 thoughts, it merges it and tries to make it 1 thought. And it gives me a bad response. But if I give it first thought, then second thought, then third thought, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how fast it is. So there's a learning curve on how to use it, but it's life altering. It should make everybody more productive. I am very concerned about AI and robotics and the future. And part of it of ImagineBC is that I'm so concerned about it is that when it starts to take jobs, which it will do, what are we going to do? And let's not talk about universal basic income because it doesn't work. It doesn't work because I'll ask you one simple question. Where's the money coming from? You want to give the money to Leo over there, but where'd it come from? Did it grow on a tree? Where is this money that you're going to give to Leo? Well, the answer is it comes from taxes. But if nobody's working, who pays the taxes?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The super rich aren't going to pay. They have people whose job it is so they don't have to pay taxes. Right? So don't talk to me about UBI. So do talk to me about universal basic data income. And that's what ImagineBC is about. You, me, and everybody should be fairly compensated for the use of our personal information on an ongoing basis. Think of every piece of data that you produce as an NFT, that every time it's used and traded, you're making money because it's your personal money. Now, at least then that will create some revenue stream. How much? The estimates are typically somewhere between, the lowest is $6,000 a year right now. The highest I've seen 20, but that's more than UBI.
Mm-hmm.
So at least if people are out of work, they'll be making money from themselves, their data. Then secondly, is if the ImagineBC platform, because of its model, can create many, many more solopreneurs making solid livings, that's good too. So I am worried about robotics, and ImagineBC is an answer to the potential loss of jobs.
That's great. Erik, what do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
A lot. That's a whole nother hour. The truth of the matter is that when you're young, you're naturally arrogant. And I still consider myself to be pretty good listener back then. I'm considered arrogant, but that's a self-confidence in my ability, not in a misguided, belief in my ability. The biggest regret I have is that because I was in the tech world starting in 1980. I guess it goes to the DMV. I should have gone to the West Coast. I belonged out there. That's where my mind belonged,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I mean, I'm not. And don't get me wrong. I'm not unhappy with my life. I made this decision to stay here in the DMV, and I have all the upsides for that. But I look back and I would wonder what my life would have been like if I had gone to the West Coast and got embedded into that community back then, instead of working through the rigid parochial hierarchy at Pricewaterhouse here on the East Coast. What would it have been like to be in the wild, wild West back then? That would be fascinating. That would be really cool to see.
Yeah. I know you said you have 2 sons and they work with you, but did you ever sort of tell any of them, hey, go west, my son?
No, but I wish I had.
Okay.
Looking back on it, the mistake I made was out of college, I should have told them to both go and get jobs, still knowing that they would come back and work for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think their professional development would have been better. And it's hard. It's hard as a parent. You got kids, so you already it's hard, right?
Yes, yes.
And when and then you have to now do this on a professional level. And so, if ImagineBC were to go away tomorrow, I'm concerned about, do they have the right tools to be marketable in the world? Because they've been doing one thing for so long. How many young people? Well, I mean, people their age probably had 10 jobs. They've had one. So that does concern me. I wish I had told them to go west. Now, then maybe they would have never come home. It was a selfish moment on my part.
Yeah, you never know. Well, what I have seen in family businesses, or maybe they'll come into the family business, is okay, you like it, great. Go work for whatever competitor, whether locally or somewhere else, West Coast, wherever it may be. Be there for a couple of years, jump around, maybe you go somewhere else. Maybe you want to come back to this family business one day, maybe you don't. But that's what I've seen a lot of times work out, that they just say, okay, great, you want to do this, but first go work with a competitor and then come
That's
back.
definitely, in hindsight, that's the way to do it. And as I said, it was selfish on my part. I
Yeah.
like being around my boys.
I understand. I have three boys myself. That's great. Coming to an end here soon, what does the next couple of years look like for you in ImagineBC? What are you most excited about?
Well, I'm very hopeful that we'll gain the traction in Africa through these four initiatives, continue to grow there, really, really provide the help to the populations from a point of helping them earn money and get access to insurance and phones like we've been talking about. But clearly, it's always been my goal to get it back here to the United States. Because as I said, we have poor people here too. They're just not as poor as over there. And when the model works, it'll work here as well. And we're going to need it back over here because of everything we just discussed about robotics and loss of jobs. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what's driving me, is to get it to work in Africa, but to leverage it back here, back home.
I love that. When you're not busy working, Eric, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Oh, these days, a lot of my free time is taken up with my grandkids. But I still remain I'm a golfer, tennis player, and squash player. I have the luxury of living across the street from the club I belong to, so I could, and because our business is in Africa, by 11 o'clock in the morning, my day is done talking with them. So that leaves a lot of flexibility in the afternoons to chase those passions. And I am, as I said, although I'll never retire, I can't work today in my 60s the way I did when I was 27. I notice it after a meeting, right? I notice it after I travel. The recovery time is just longer. But I chase, they keep me healthy. They keep me moving, they keep me healthy.
There are some benefits whether you're traveling or I remember sometimes when I go to Europe, last year I was in Europe for a while, and I would be in Europe time, maybe 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And over here, the business day was just ending in the East Coast and in the US. And I'll be email or phone calls. And it was great just because I was able to enjoy all of Europe during the day.
Yeah.
And then in the evening, I can knock off some work for a couple of
Yep.
hours. And so I felt productive because I was with the family, enjoying wherever I was visiting on that side of the world. And then I got some work done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a big advantage to the time lag.
It
So
is.
yeah,
It is.
I find by 2 in the afternoon, I've already worked, probably a 10-hour day. So gives me a lot of time to kick around and do the things I like to do.
If people want to learn more about you and what you're doing at ImagineBC, where can they go to find more information, please?
Certainly just go to imaginebc.either com or .net on the web, or feel free to email me at erind@imaginebc.net.
Great. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a great time.
Thanks. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.